So the project that you're, I presume, working primarily on now is Starfield. What are your goals with Starfield?
I think our aspirations for that game, it's the end-all be-all science fiction game that everyone's always wanted to play. The end-all be-all science fiction game that everyone's always wanted to play. The end-all be-all science fiction game.
The end-all be-all science fiction game that everyone's always wanted to play.
This man knows we're listening, and he has the audacity to just casually tailor the biggest possible shoes to fill, even as the community seems to revel in the thought of his demise on a daily basis. As a longtime fan of Bethesda RPGs, I don't know whether to be f***ing stoked over the promise of this game or to try to be the voice of sobering skepticism. It's tough to resist the call of the hype train as that promise rings in my head, the end-all be-all sci-fi game. Of course, the community remains understandably blistered with skepticism and disconcertion thanks to the absolute PR catastrophe that is Fallout 76. I could lay into that game, but that horse is long since beaten dead. Frankly, there's not even anything left to beat anymore. I'd just be slamming a stick into bits of bone meal spread across the ground. I think everyone gets the point. But now, a lot of us are looking at that whole mess and thinking, in light of Fallout 76, what the hell should I make of Starfield? The concept is great. For broad strokes purposes, it's Elder Scrolls in space, just with different lore, but Bethesda Game Studios made Fallout 76, right? Why would we look forward to their next game? Well, the extent of Todd Howard's involvement with 76 is somewhat dubious as far as I can tell. What a lot of people don't realize is that as of 2016 or so, Bethesda Game Studios is a much more ambiguous term than it used to be. A long time ago, you could just say Bethesda and everyone was like, oh yeah, Morrowind and Oblivion. But now they've become such a massive company that the phrase Bethesda is just too vague. It's not even enough to say Bethesda Game Studios anymore. If you're referring to Todd Howard's personal squad, who made Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, Skyrim, etc., you have to say Bethesda Game Studios, Maryland, to distinguish from all these other Bethesda Game Studios that do God knows what. But there is a silver lining to all this convoluted bullshit. From what I gather, Fallout 76 was just an experiment that the Todd Squad started while working on Fallout 4.
76 is the multiplayer design from Fallout 4.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No one said that?
No.
And when they were ready to move on to Starfield, they handed 76 over to a different team in Austin, Texas. Apparently that's where the bulk of its development took place.
During all of this, the team in Maryland was transitioning onto Fallout 4 DLC and spinning up Starfield. So BGS asked the folks in Austin if they'd take a swing at retrofitting multiplayer capabilities into the Fallout 4 engine.
Meaning the Todd Squad in Maryland were busy with Starfield this whole time, relatively hands-off with 76 being in a different state and all. This checks out pretty well, since before Fallout 76 was even finished, Todd said Starfield was pretty far along.
And Starfield is in production. It's a game we've been making for a while.
Well, okay, so you're able to play Starfield now.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a good way to say it. Starfield is playable. We've been working on it that's another one that's had a long go. I think the trademark got registered in 2013.
There are a few relieving deductions to be gathered from all this. One, if Fallout 76 was mainly developed by another studio altogether, then it's no indication whatsoever of what we can expect from BGS Maryland's next game. And two, since the Maryland team wasn't fully occupied with Fallout 76, it stands to reason that Starfield has been in full production for longer than any Todd Howard-directed RPG ever has. If you don't count 76 as a full-fledged Todd Squad game, we're looking at a 5-year gap minimum for Starfield's development following Fallout 4, and that's if it comes out this year, which who knows. Point is, this game has had time to marinate, and we can all agree that that's a good thing. And so far, every time Todd Howard gets his directorial hands on a franchise for the first time, he produces something monumentally awesome. The first example of this is Morrowind, which is considered by many to be the gold standard of Elder Scrolls games, or even the greatest RPG of all time. The core fan consensus seems to be that the series only went downhill after this point, but of course that's eternally debatable. I myself oscillate between opinions on the matter, but anyway, the second example is Fallout 3, which revived and reinvented the entire Fallout series, which would otherwise remain woefully obscure and not to mention a dead franchise. Fallout 3 introduced a lot of the series' hallmarks like VATS, and it laid the groundwork for Fallout New Vegas, which recycled most of Fallout 3's assets, mechanics, etc. in straight-up copy and paste fashion. We Fallout fans owe a lot to Fallout 3. It may be premature to call this a trend in Todd's career, but maybe it's no coincidence that his first directorial outing with each franchise is its best. It's possible that the continuous demand for sequels is exactly what stagnates their creativity. They may purge their best ideas in their first outing and find themselves unsure where to go next. This is actually a really common challenge that successful creators face throughout every medium. When an audience demands more from a franchise, but the creator just doesn't know where to go with it, it often doesn't go too well. Sometimes it's best for a creator not to be tethered to a particular franchise or two. It can be refreshing to step into new territory from time to time. A fresh lore set might be exactly what they need to strike gold yet again, or maybe I'm just seeing what I want to see. I mean, I can admit I want to be excited for Starfield, but hell, it's not like they've given us a lot to go off of. The trailer we got reveals some tonal direction and a pinch of technological lore for the game, but that's it. We're left to pick apart vague remarks from interviews and so on. If you really dig, there are a couple of meaningful tidbits Todd Howard sprinkles in.
It's a game, but it still has an authenticity to, okay, this could happen.
Yep.
You know, we talked like, what kind of fuel do the ships use? Like, we're using helium-3, which we can debate whether that's a good power source for spaceships. Traveling in space in our game is still, let's say it's like flight in the 40s. Like, it's dangerous. It's still dangerous to go and explore. But even though lots of people do it.
Yeah, space is far. That's the thing. It's like, you have to definitely cut that short.
This at least fills us in on where among the spectrum of space fiction Starfield falls. A lot of people look at Star Trek, Star Wars, maybe even Alien, and make somewhat of a sweeping generalization as if all of these belong together. Space fiction actually has quite a spectrum. There's the really grounded lo-fi science fiction that feels like a very near extension of our own world. Then there's the hyper-advanced distant future with intergalactic civilizations, utopian technology, lasers, chrome, and tights. And then of course there's outright space fantasy where Earth is irrelevant, along with the laws of science and so on. It plays by its own rules. There are masterpieces on both extremes of the spectrum. There's no wrong way to go, but judging by Todd's comments and the ship from the trailer, which bears a pretty distinct resemblance to real-life space tech, it's a fair assumption that Starfield belongs on the more grounded side of the spectrum. It certainly doesn't look as high-tech as what you'd see in Star Trek, but there is what looks like warp speed at the end of the trailer. So I'm guessing Starfield belongs somewhere between the grounded lo-fi end and the high-tech side, but I'm definitely not seeing any hint of the fantasy end of the spectrum, at least not yet. I'm thinking Starfield's world is somewhat of a middle ground between Ridley Scott's Alien and maybe Star Trek. Now, if this is really the end-all be-all sci-fi RPG, I'd hope we see some alien races. I'd even hope for playable ones. But if Starfield leans toward the grounded side of the spectrum, intelligent alien life may be treated as more of a rarity. When it comes to film, I like for space aesthetics to be as grounded as possible, but I worry that too much realism might be inhibiting on the gameplay front. For example, if dungeon crawling in Starfield does not involve any alien combat, it might turn out intolerably dull. Sure, we can fight human NPCs and robots, but that won't compare to the majestic variety of, say, Elder Scrolls. Obviously, Outer Worlds handled space extremely well without intelligent life, but as I think about Bethesda's particular set of strengths and all the playable races in Elder Scrolls, I think not having a robust set of non-human races would be such a missed opportunity for Bethesda in particular. They're pretty outstanding when it comes to that sort of lore. If nothing else, maybe alien ruins in Starfield will be like Skyrim's Dwemer ruins, a sort of glimpse into a mysterious race of beings that you rarely encounter face to face. Metroid has always toyed with that, deep space ruins that house mystifying technologies to plunder and wield. I'd be pleased if Starfield's dungeons took a page out of Metroid's book. And speaking of dungeon crawling, I think Starfield's success hinges on the necessity that they nail the atmosphere, which is why I'm also hoping they take a hard look at Alien Isolation. This game delivers that used future aesthetic with uncanny perfection. I've never felt so enveloped in thick, deep space. Alien Isolation's environments grip and immerse me in a way that's entirely unparalleled by any and all other space level design. If you can think of a better example, please comment because I have to try it. Finally, I plan to discuss the voice protagonist topic in a more dedicated video when the right time comes. If that's a topic you feel particularly opinionated on, answer this question in the comments. How do you feel about silent protagonists versus voice protagonists, specifically in games like Elder Scrolls, Fallout, or Starfield, where the character is meant to be at the disposal of the player's imagination? As we learn more about Starfield, perhaps at E3, I'd like to comment more on it here and there. So if you enjoyed this content, please consider checking out my other videos. I talk about RPGs, movies, even mythology, because I just f***ing love fiction. And this is a very new channel, so your like or sub would go a long way. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.